Thank you for watching our presentation on outsourcing medical device logistics, best practices and key gains. My name is Brian Shanebackler. I work for a company called IntegraCore, which is a supply chain management outsourcing company with locations in Salt Lake City, Utah and Atlanta, Georgia. The reason I'm here today is to educate you on logistics outsourcing as part of your company's overall business strategy. I have over 16 years in logistics. I started off as a transportation officer in the United States Army and have worked for companies big and small. I have worked in diverse industries from the automotive industry to the oil and gas industry, and currently I am an owner and the general manager of the IntegraCore's Atlanta operations. I plan on educating you by achieving these objectives. First, I would like to start by talking about some of the latest trends in the medical device logistics industry. It is important to understand what is going on in the industry in order to develop a strategy for operating in the future. Next, we will spend some time talking about a 7-step process to formulating your logistics strategy. Then we will talk about using outsourcing as a tactic that may or may not fit into your overall strategy. Lastly, I will share with you some of the best and worst practices I have seen in outsourcing so that you do not make some of the mistakes that I have seen others make. An organization called I for Transport has been hosting conferences around the world related to supply chain management. This year they hosted a conference in Chicago that focused on life science logistics. As part of that conference, they presented a report based upon a survey of a variety of people in the life sciences industry. The I for Transport survey found the following trends. Number one, the best companies in the medical device industry were leveraging the best practices of the high-tech industry. Number two, other companies were borrowing best practices from the pharmaceutical industry. Number three, massive change is abound in the industry. This is represented in healthcare reform, legislative compliance issues, and the push for companies to expand into developing markets. Additionally, coming out of the Great Recession, there seems to be continued emphasis on cost reduction and efficiency. There were several questions on the survey, but I found these 3 questions the most interesting relative to our group and topic today. Number 1, which parts of your supply chain do you outsource? Number 2, what causes the most difficulty when selecting third-party logistics companies? And number 3, how do you evaluate potential supply chain partners? The first question is, which parts of your supply chain do you outsource? The dark lines represent the 2010 results, and the lighter lines represent the 2011 results. As you can see, the top 3 results for the last 2 years have been transportation, warehousing, and manufacturing. The biggest increase appears in the number of respondents outsourcing their manufacturing. The second question was, what are the issues making it difficult for medical device manufacturers seeking third-party logistics partners? The number 1 answer was 3PLs lacking solutions needed by the medical device industry, and number 2 was high cost. The third question was, what traits are medical device manufacturers seeking in potential 3PL partners? The number 1 question was a history of working with medical device companies. The number 2 question was cost effectiveness. In summary, the survey points out the following trends. Number 1, outsourcing is a tactic deployed by many medical device manufacturers. Number 2, outsourcing of transportation, logistics, and warehousing are the top outsourced functions. Number 3, the top concerns and most desired qualities are experience and cost. Next, I want to talk about the 7 steps I have developed for creating your logistics strategy. Before you make a decision about logistics outsourcing, it is important to first formulate your logistics strategy. Outsourcing is a tactic that can support your logistics strategy, but it is imperative that it also support the overall business strategy. It is important that you understand your business strategy. Your executive team and or CEO set the business strategy. For instance, the business strategy might be to reduce costs and grow revenues. Let's assume that you are the senior supply chain person in your organization. Next, you would want to look at your value chain strategy and determine what you can do to reduce costs and grow revenue. An example of this might be to move manufacturing closer to your markets to reduce inventory and reduce transportation costs. The logistics strategy would then be built around supporting the value chain strategy and building initiatives that support the business strategy directly. Therefore, your logistics strategy would be to set up distribution located closer to your customers, negotiate better freight rates, and reduce your order fulfillment costs. Once your logistics strategy has been distilled from the overall business and value chain strategies, you can begin to look at the strengths and weaknesses within your organization. Once you have an inventory of these, you can begin to analyze how playing to your strengths or shoring up your weaknesses can meet your logistics strategy. Also consider what activities you are performing, which are core processes and which are non-core processes. Non-core process should be reviewed to see if they can be outsourced in order to better accomplish your logistics strategy. Step 3 is to look at the trends outside your company. Look at the opportunities and threats that lie within your industry. Take inventory of them, then decide what initiatives you can implement to take advantage of the opportunities and or mitigate the threats. Based upon your SWOT analysis, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, define what your company's logistics strategy would look like in a perfect world. What would it look like to play to your strengths, shore up your weaknesses, take advantage of the market opportunities, and mitigate your threats? Define the future state with as much detail as possible. What does it look like in 5 years from now? What does it look like next year? Now, honestly define your current state. Give yourself an honest assessment of where you are today. Next, identify the gaps between your future and current states. Define these gaps with as much detail as possible. What are the KPIs, or key performance indicators, that you are measuring around these gaps? What KPIs do you need to measure to quantify the gaps? Step 7. What is your plan to fill these gaps? Define the goals you want to achieve with as much detail as possible. Develop initiatives around your plan, then track your initiatives by task, by owner, and by date. Now that you have your logistics strategy fine-tuned with initiatives and goals, we can investigate a tactic which is often used by companies in your industry. This tactic is called outsourcing. As we have seen in the survey, many companies in your industry are outsourcing their transportation, logistics, and warehousing. The smartest reason to outsource is because it supports your logistics strategy, which ultimately supports your business strategy. Here are some of the reasons companies outsource. Based upon the trends we are seeing with expansions into developing markets, outsourcing could be a great way to enter new markets. Based upon the trends we are seeing about cost reduction, outsourcing could be a great option for lowering costs and increasing efficiencies. Here are some of the key benefits that can be gained as a result. You will recall in our SWOT analysis we talked about core and non-core functions. Outsourcing can be a great way to lower your costs and gain expertise in non-core business processes. So let's say you've decided to outsource based upon your business strategy, and you are looking to gain some of the key benefits mentioned previously. What are some of the things you should and should not do? What are the things I have seen done well, and what are some of the things I have seen done not so well? I once heard the saying that business is not done by businesses, it is done by people. Therefore, we need to focus on establishing the relationships in an outsourcing arrangement. Clearly communicating initial expectations is critical to getting an outsourcing relationship established. The more objective the expectations, the better. It is wise to first define your current state and then define the goals you expect to achieve through your outsourcing relationship. These goals then become the success criteria that will be used throughout the relationship to evaluate performance. It will become very evident when performance expectations are not being met. The success criteria will become the metrics by which the success of the relationship is judged. These metrics need to be reported upon at an agreed upon interval and communicated to a defined group with a vested interest in the outsourcing relationship. It is helpful to define a format for how problems will be resolved when expectations and goals are not being met. Conversely, it may be helpful to offer incentives for meeting and exceeding goals. The term for this is vested outsourcing. In my experience, this is where I've seen outsourcing go wrong. Disappointment in any relationship often comes from unrealized expectations. Therefore, failure to communicate expectation is a recipe for disaster. I think most of the items listed here can be attributed to a general lack of communication. For instance, secrecy is a lack of communication and a lack of trust. A failed implementation is a bad way to start off an outsourcing relationship. Make sure both parties in the relationship are honest about time estimates for implementation and that everyone does their part to hit delivery dates. These are just some of the ways I have seen outsourcing relationships go sideways. In my experience, the keys to success in any outsourcing relationship are: number one, partnering. Partnering means establishing goals together and driving continuous improvement in both organizations to achieve those goals. If your outsourcing partner fails, you fail. Conversely, if you succeed, they succeed. Managing. Managing is all about objective data to me. What are the success criteria? What are the KPIs? Now let's manage them to drive continuous improvement. Lord Kelvin says, to measure is to know, and if you cannot measure it, then you cannot improve it. Lastly, nurturing. The relationship must be nurtured. There must be ongoing participation by both sides. Mutual successes should be celebrated. The theme of our talk today was centered around the concept of outsourcing your medical device logistics. First, we talked about the latest trends in medical device logistics. It is important to understand what is going on in the industry in order to develop a strategy for the future. Next, we talked about the 7-step strategy to formulating your logistics strategy. Then we talked about using outsourcing as a tactic that may or may not fit into your overall business strategy. Lastly, I talked about the best and worst practices I have seen in outsourcing so that you do not make some of the same mistakes I have seen others make. Thank you for your time today. This concludes my presentation. I am Brian Shanebackler of IntegraCore's Atlanta operation. I would encourage you to go to our website and download a copy of this presentation. We have recorded this presentation as a video so that you'll be able to watch it and share it with others. Also, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn.